I was pleasantly surprised that they didn't say more about Trump. I didn't want the debate to turn into a Trump debate. I think they just answered the question and got on with things.
I think they did a good job. I think they were able to point out some of the inequities and some of the things that were said during the hearings, point out the criminal activity, and kind of move on from that. They did a good job overall throughout the entire debate, really point out how much of a criminal Trump is and some of the things that he's done and why he should be held accountable. So I think it was a good balance, actually.
This was one of the issues where I felt everybody was pretty much in alignment on. Like, I mean, as we progressed through the night, people differentiated themselves on deeper issues, but on the issue of Trump, I think everybody is pretty much in alignment in wanting to see him impeached and, going sort of down the line of, whatever he's, all of the things that he's committed and how it's going to sort of play out. So it pretty much played out how I thought it would. So.
As far as the issue of Trump, I was really afraid that what's going on today with the hearings and what's going on with Trump would take over the debate. And I was really pleased that it didn't. It was appropriately addressed. Everyone pretty much was in line with the feelings on, where we are as a nation and where we are with the hearings, but it did not take over the substance of the debate itself. So I was impressed.
And when we talked about it, I mean, you mentioned that, as the debate progressed, it started to see a little bit more differentiation between the different candidates. Where do you believe you saw the biggest difference between the candidates and who really made an impression? Go ahead.
I mean, for me, it seemed as though, like, a lot of the candidates are following the policy suggestions of Sanders. Like, I think he led with a lot of these issues back in 2016, whether it's Medicare for all, student loan forgiveness, income inequality and things like that. So you're seeing that his issues have really pushed the party towards, that side of things to the left, becoming more progressive. So you'll see people like Warren sort of, I think, piggybacking off of these ideas that are extremely popular. Maybe she did not necessarily support back in the day. Same thing with Kamala Harris and some of these other individuals. So, I mean, I think, in terms of like ideology, he was probably the strongest in terms of staying consistent. He has a track record of defending these policies throughout his career. A lot of these people have, I think, sort of progressed over time and changed their policies within recent years. So it's just interesting to see that aspect.
I believe these type of debates always highlight the skilled orator with an educated, inspiring message. What I was looking for more is that message with a path to success. So there's been a lot put out by several of the candidates, but I'm looking for what could actually work. I mean, once we get somebody into office and Trump is no longer there, what is actually going to be able to be implemented with a House that is Democratic and a Senate that's not? So I was looking more for the path of success, because when you look across the board, much of the same sentiment exists. So when you're looking at, what we would like to see, where we would like to go, I agree with everybody across the stage. But how are we going to get there?
Go ahead.
I had a thought that occurred to me. I think something that no one addressed actually is that I believe we're in a crisis over capitalism versus socialism. You have a faction of people who just want to make money and they're in power. And people like Bernie tend to go towards the socialist side. And to be able to merge those two would be the absolute perfect thing. But I think there's just this matrix of opposition, and someone has got to be able to circumvent that or get beyond that. And I think that Yang created a desire in me to go further into the IT world. We talk about the standard issues about black and white and healthcare, and I think that we need to get more into the future. We need to attract the younger voters, which we think we are, and in doing that, what's important to them? They live with technology, so I think that's an important thing that we need to strive for.
I was glad to see in the first hour they were more civil than in past debates. Biden seemed to be more focused. In the beginning, I felt like he was rambling, and and I felt like he was more focused. He was not, I mean, at least towards the end, got a little bit more angry, but not as angry as before. And I definitely agree that Biden has had, not Biden, that Sanders has had an immense impact on the Democratic Party. But I am worried that it's going to be attacked by Trump as being socialist, and that's been his thing. But I still think like the four candidates that went in strong are still the fearsome four, as they call them: Sanders, Biden, Warren, and who is the fourth now? Buttigieg. Yeah, Mayor Pete are still holding their ground. I don't know that any of the others are really, or if there are any other breakout candidates. And I don't know how in regarding issues and the differentiation that you mentioned, I don't know at the end of the day, do voters vote on how a candidate makes them feel, if they give them hope and who they can relate to, rather than what their policy positions are.
I was having the same thought. I can't remember what the topic was, but it was the socialism versus capitalism, and when we weren't on the air, but having that conversation about where the dynamics are in that power structure. And so some of the things that came to my mind when I was listening at the very beginning was Booker kind of alluded to taking a deeper sense of the problem and empowering people. And so that conversation kind of spurred, I think, early on, not so much in this round, you heard it a little bit, but there is a sense of organizing and movement, and that also came out from, I think, Steyer, because he comes from that background. And a lot of what we're looking for is change, and what I think one of the last comments at the end there was, what are we actually doing? We have 100 years of, politicians on the stage. What's actually been done? And so for me, I do have to agree with the sense that Biden provided for me, in my opinion, and how I see things, is that we don't have time, to bring somebody in new and give them 2-3 years to learn what the job is. I know there's a lot of sensitivity around himself, but I think if we're talking about people with experience and qualifications, we all agree at some point that everybody on that stage tonight has something to give. And so I'm hoping to see that collective effort at some point, but I really felt, pulled towards Biden and his experience tonight.
And that kind of brings me up to the next point. I mean, we in this room and also throughout this county especially are going to have an outsized weight when it comes to potentially selecting a candidate for the presidency and also who the president may eventually be. How is that weighing on your decision on who you may support in the future based off maybe who may speak to you, with it is, but also on the other hand, who you think may have the best chance of winning?
Okay, well, and my thought is Sanders and Warren are, to me, unelectable. I don't think they're going to be able to capture enough of the populace to get where they need to get and beat Trump in the end. As she was saying, Biden is the safe bet right now. He's the safe choice. He knows what he's doing. He is the most centrist of the group, one of the most centrist, and I think that this country needs is a swing back towards the middle. I think the extreme is not going to work. So although I don't feel like Biden did the greatest tonight, I don't think his performance was really on point, as well as I think Buttigieg did probably the best job on the stage, defending himself and getting his point across. But I think Biden is still a safe choice. And if it comes down to Arizona and me making a choice in this purple state, I'm going to go with Biden.
Yeah, I would agree that Biden, he brought credibility each time with the experience, and his comment on on the job training was very powerful. Yeah. because it's true. He's already been with the president for 8 years. He does know the leaders. I think that changed a little bit for me, because even though I agree with with Bernie on a lot of issues in his policies, I do think Biden is a safer choice. Biden is probably more likely to be able to win the presidency, and some may view him as the old guard. However, I think probably donors and other people in the establishment would rather go with Biden than someone like Mayor Buttigieg at the end, because it is the safer bet.
I would say that I'm torn, because we're going back to the subject of who's actually electable, who can beat Trump, and then who I would like to see given a shot, right? So I am looking at Buttigieg, Mayor Pete, because I like his message. I like the freshness of his message. Who do I think can beat Trump? I'm back at the vice president. But I'm waiting to hear from Bloomberg to see if he's going to jump in the race. I know it's a pie in the sky dream that he jumps in, but there's been a lot of undertone talk about him. So I'm still open. It's a year out, and I don't think I'm ready to make a definitive decision yet.
As somebody who, I have 3 young sons and who's trying to project like what is the future that they're going to be looking at, down the road. I'm going to have to send 3 kids to college. When I was going to college, my siblings were, much older than me. So then the amount that they were paying for college compared to what I paid for college was exorbitantly different. Now what I paid in college versus what kids are paying now for college is exorbitantly different. And what's happening in this country is basically indicative of massive wealth inequality that's manifesting itself generation over generation. It's accelerating itself. So now what you have is basically a class of super billionaires that's coming up, and basically the middle class is shrinking. So from my standpoint, the only person I see a few candidates actually like show a little bit of excitement in terms of like changing the structure within society, and Bernie is one of those individuals. Yes, he's an older candidate, but like I mentioned earlier, he's actively advocated for these issues throughout his political career. So that's why I feel like he would be at least somebody that's going to keep the promises that he has put out there first and foremost. Warren is also, I think, at least she's progressed on this in terms of her history of holding the big banks accountable and being able to stand up, speak truth to power from that standpoint. What I feel is that there's some major structural issues that exist in this country that have to be addressed, and who is going to get this younger generation, my kids and the next generation, excited. So we really have to look at the candidates who are going to create a sense of excitement and movement amongst them, and I feel there's very few candidates that have that right now, even though there are people in the establishment who spoke well.
Yeah. Actually, now that you say that, I mean, the last comment that Sanders brought up that Bernie mentioned was that I didn't realize he was able to raise more campaign funds than anyone in history. That's a pretty huge feat. And so, yeah, what's that? Yeah, contributor, or like, right, or well, at least I think it was something like 4 million. 4 million contributors, which averaged at $18 per person. So that's pretty huge. And the thing I think that gets in his way, I think, is just, his age, and the fact that he just recently had a heart attack. But just seeing the impact he's had on the Democratic Party and the ideas he's bringing, and someone who's addressing the social inequality, someone who you feel is authentic and has been consistent and does have the record. So again, it goes back to trying to choose who is the one you would like to see as the president versus who is the one you think will beat President Trump. And I would hope that any one of them on stage would be able to beat President Trump at this point.
That's the one nut to crack. Beat Trump. I keep hoping that there's that breakout candidate that's just going to wow us, kind of like Obama did. You knew from the first time you heard him speak, this is a guy. He's going to make waves. He's going to do something. I don't think that anyone on that stage to come close, Klobuchar and Pete, to really satisfying me. I believe, and I've said this probably for years, Attorney General Harris, Education Bernie, Health Warren, IT newly created Yang, Climate Change Stiers, and Veterans Affairs Pete. They all have that passion in that area, and we don't. Leadership does not mean rolling up your sleeves, which I'm guilty of. Leadership is being able to get the right people to roll up their sleeves. And I think these people would be great sleeve rollers.
And because of time, I sadly have to skip a lot of questions I would like to ask, but may not have enough time to. We're still a while out from the election, but we still have 10 people on stage. We had 12 people on stage, a couple months ago, but the field really hasn't reduced so far. Does anyone believe they have found the candidate that they know they want to support throughout the entire process so far, when it comes to the primary season and eventually to the general election?
You're making that hard. I would love to see a woman in leadership in the presidency, and I think many of us would. Some of the concerns are they're too emotional, right? And then something that I think Amy Klobuchar said tonight was that women are held to a higher standard. So we can sit here and debate about, the men that are the top runners or the candidates of women that are also still in there. But even we as women hold them to a higher standard because we expect that the job is going to be tough. I think if in that respect, if I supported a female for the presidency, it would be Elizabeth Warren after tonight. But I think you've heard me say that, my choice is Biden at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I think that at this point, unless something breaks out, like you were saying, somebody comes out of a dark horse comes out of nowhere, I'm going to stick with Biden for now, and I would love to see a Biden-Warren ticket. I think that captures a ton of energy that's needed behind the Biden wave. So that's who I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with Biden, and I would love to see Warren as a vice president for him at this point.
You've heard me already.
Okay, if you guys are done, do you have something really quick?
Yeah, I mean, as far as just what I've seen so far, I mean, I like the policies of Sanders, so I'm sort of putting him as the front runner. I obviously am more and more impressed with Warren, I think, in terms of like the progressive, agenda that they put forward, and standing up to, the big banks. That is, those two really stand out in terms of like restructuring how wealth inequality works in this country and sort of helping bring up the middle class. So it's just a matter of, what I feel fortunate about is that this is actually a race where you feel like you have more than one good option that exists, and whoever ends up coming out of this will be worthy of support, from what I see. So
I have one last statement.
Yeah. Go.
I wanted to stand up and cheer when Klobuchar said we need to live our values at the border.
Right.
That is an about face for where we are right now. We need to live our values, not just at the borders, but through our every aspect of who we are as a country, and we need to project that to other countries, and we're not there right now.
Mm-hmm. And we need to hold our leaders to the same standard, that they also, and that they're not above the law, and that they uphold our values in the White House, at the border, wherever it may be. And so I was glad to see that theme repeated, that no one is above the law, and I hope to see it be implemented.
Exactly.
And the president should uphold the very standards that America is and has been known as. One comment on Warren, and this is a personal opinion. When she was placed in charge of TARP, she was interviewed, and the question was, where's all the money gone? The money disappeared, wasn't used for what it meant to be. And her answer as the head of TARP was simply, I don't know. that did it for me. I just can't support a person who didn't know about what they were supposed to know.
And then my last little question, this is just a show of hands. First off, do you believe that a candidate up there, that the candidate that can potentially beat if they're facing President Trump in the fall of next year is on that stage, or was on that stage tonight? By a show of hands.
Oh, absolutely.
How confident are you that the person that is actually put forward by the Democratic nomination process can actually defeat Trump at this point? Show of hands.
Well, hopefully anybody.
Will. Sorry, Will.
Can, oh, okay.
Okay.